When a rodent is forcefully smoked out of each tunnel, it constitutes a menace in the farm of an old woman. It is that adage that I use to welcome you to today's edition of Isthmus Daily Rendezvous. I'm your brother and friend MC Leaky, otherwise known as a Gajigo Cafe Amos. And today we are going to be deliberating on the new British Prime Minister's determination to end rough sleeping in London. What does this portend to immigrants who have not fully secured their place in the United Kingdom? All right, today we have some questions that is going to serve as our guide in today's discussion. And number one um, in our list today is um, does this proclamation by the new British Prime Minister means that immigrants who come to the United Kingdom not through the proper channel or the proper means um, would face stricter sanctions that would jeopardize their hope and, in fact, dash, their hope of, a better life in the United Kingdom. Because when immigrants generally go to the United Kingdom, especially from the underdeveloped countries, they have high hopes, expectation that life will be a lot more easy and better for them. But this phenomenon rather known as rough sleeping is contrary to the vision of the new British Prime Minister. How will this affect the livelihood of immigrants who didn't come to the UK in through, or rather, the proper channel? And the second question we're going to be deliberating upon today is what does this, you know, how is this going to affect students or graduates of foreign countries in the United Kingdom who want to continue to stay in the United Kingdom? Because education is one of the means through which people from foreign countries settle in the United Kingdom, especially when they finish their academic pursuits. Where does this pose a threat at all to their continued stay in the United Kingdom? And then we also have this claim or accusation or allegation, whatever you might damn it, about this insistence, of the embassies of developed countries, insisting that those that must be given visa, all right, or given resident permit to stay in their country must be those who have fat or buoyant accounts, bank accounts rather. So we want to find out, is that really the only determining or factor or criteria that, you know, migrating to the United Kingdom or any other developed country in the world entails, right? Must someone be a person or an individual who has a very fat bank account, all right, before that person will be qualified to live in the United Kingdom? And then the last question we want to ask today is, does this in any way, all right, mean that the relationship that most developing countries have with the United Kingdom, especially in line with regards to exports, would be significantly um, dealt impacted rather negatively? That's what I want to say, impacted negatively. I am the brother and friend. This is It's Miss TV, and I'll be back after this time out. Welcome back from that short break. I am Silly Brother, I am Silly Clicky, and this is still It's Miss TV. Now, um, this segment of our discussion is going to focus, on why, the incidence of rough sleeping occurs in the first place. Of course, we have noted earlier that sleeping has to do with homelessness, of people sleeping in the streets, right, constituting nuisance and leading to, incidents of crime and criminality. All right. So, what are the factors that give rise to this phenomenon? That's what we want to look at, in this segment of our discussion. All right. The first thing is that it's, generally come to be as a result of, those who come into a particular country, especially a developed country, through illegal means, illegal migrants, all right, those who come in through the back channel, all right. Yes, like what we have uh, a while ago. The World Cup was recently rounded off, and then you have people who have gone to the United States and who wouldn't want to go back to, home countries, and they want to, stay back in the United States. What do they do? All right, you see them jumping from one place to the other, hiding, and then finally trying to find a way to, settle in the United States. So that's, one of the things that the new British Prime Minister says, that it, you know, his government is going to work against or kick against. All right, I don't know how he's going to do that. Whether he's going to build, erect or construct new edifices for people who find themselves in that, situation already in the United Kingdom, all right, or he's going to deport them and ask them to go back to their home countries. Okay, that's left to him. But he said he's going to end that in the United Kingdom. All right, so, one of the ways that that situation, arises is because people come into developed countries looking for, a way of survival because of the hardship they are facing in their indigenous countries. All right, especially those of those people from war-torn African countries and underdeveloped countries where poverty is prevailing, and really dealing with, individuals and citizens of such countries. All right, and then some other factors that could lead to the phenomenon of homelessness or of sleeping, all right, in a country has to do with, emergencies, negative emergencies. For instance, when a young man, all right, suddenly loses his job, all right, and if he hadn't, planned, or left a buffer that could take care of such a situation, you find out that such an individual could be kicked out from his apartment, and he could, find himself in the streets. Then he will begin to, experience such, level of difficulty, which would negatively impact the society. All right, so that's another factor. And then finally on our list tonight is the inability of people to afford, you know, um, good homes on their own. All right. For instance, there's a phenomenon that happens in Nigeria. Once you graduate and finish your youth service, you find out that your parents divest themselves of the relationship, of the responsibility rather, of taking care of you. All right. It's, you know, it's going to be hard for them to be shouldering most of the responsibilities they had initially, show that for an individual. All right, so that's what happens in most countries when a young man gets to the age of accountability. He would start taking care of himself. All right, so, and if he hadn't garnered the financial muscle to begin to shoulder such responsibilities, you find out the person will be in the street. All right, and now why, you know can we say that the new UK Prime Minister is a wicked man? Of course not. Because this phenomenon or scenario or issue of um, sleeping in the streets, all right, has a way of negatively impacting the society. For instance, you know that the UK is a very, conventional ordered society where things must be done in a particular order or pattern. All right. Yes, that's why, they consider this an um, um, a situation that must be quickly nipped in the bud. All right, yes, because you find out that an average Oyibo person, as we call them here in Nigeria, wouldn't want anything that would disturb them at all. They want to live a peace, quiet, serene, you know, tranquil life. They listen to the birds, you know, in tune with nature, go out and enjoy, the flora and fauna, and then they come back, live a quiet life. And when you have people who are in the streets, roaming about like vagrants and vagabonds, you find out, it makes them afraid, and they would, suddenly develop health issues and conditions that wouldn't ordinarily be there if those people were not making them to be terrified. Have you seen it? And then there's also this possibility of increase, a surge in crime level. All right, that's why I think that the new prime minister has taken the right step in, saying that this issue, all right, of rough sleeping must be taken care of. Now, in our next segment, we want to look at what, how this would generally affect students from other countries who are coming to the UK for their education, and immigrants, all right, who, would one way or the other find themselves in the United Kingdom, and not probably through the approved channels. What does this portend for such people? Are they going to end in jail? Are they going to be deported outrightly? We'll find out in the next segment. My name is MC Clicky, and this is Isthmus TV.